Alright folks, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today I want to talk about Relic Delta. I feel Relic Delta has really been flying under the radar with this update, mainly because it wasn't as active. We didn't really get to see it in action as much, and now that we've all had our first round of Grand Arena, I think we all have a lot of very strong opinions on Relic Delta and the impact that it's played. This is compiled by the fact that there is a ridiculous amount of lag. A ridiculous amount of lag in the game. And what the general, if we put our tinfoil hats on, while yes, this update was big and it brought in a lot of stuff, it shouldn't impact the lagginess of a game unless there's something in the background that's causing that lag. And what a lot of us, I'm firmly in this camp, we believe that what's causing the lag is the Relic Delta calculation, right? It's a delay in, okay, the damage that Phil's Supreme Leader Kylo Ren should have dealt was 200,000. All right, well, we got to take 5% away from that, so now it's 190. That's not, there's something happening in the background that it's not instantaneous. And I'm not saying that that's 100%. I'm not part of coding. I don't know that for certain, but that makes sense to me. And it's the thing that we can point to and say, hey, this changed. So that's part of the problem, is the lag. A lot of us are going to blame it on Relic Delta, even if it's not the fault of Relic Delta. We're going to blame it on that, because Relic Delta was the one part of this update that everybody was vehemently against from the start. We were excited for the Coliseum. We were excited for the change in the marquee. We weren't excited for Relic Delta. And now Relic Delta comes out, and it's kind of all of our worst fears lumped into this ridiculously terrible update so far. And it shouldn't be like this. This is the 10-year anniversary. We should be celebrating, popping champagne bottles, ripping shotguns, repping Austin 316 shirts out of celebration. But instead, we feel disappointed and cheated and, almost in a sense ignored. That there's other issues in this game that we could have invested our time in, that you would have been so much happier with, and instead it's stuff that has just kind of fallen a little bit flat on its face. And there are some good parts to this update. There really are. The economy change outside of the Coliseum has been fantastic. The access to relics is beautiful. The addition of signal data to the free track of the episode the episode track there, the free side of it, getting signal data is awesome, right? There's been a lot of changes to make this better, but there's been a lot of changes that are negative. So, we're going to skip our intro, guys, because we're already 3 minutes in and I don't feel like doing it at this point. So let's start with Relic Delta and kind of talk about some of the biggest problems that I think it's representing. So the first thing is there's no audit trail. If we go to Grand Arena and we look at what my opponent did and what I did, we definitely had our issues here. And I want to kind of focus on this battle right here. Ahsoka, Ezra at Relic 9. And what I'm going to assume, when I go to this player's account and you look at the teams that he has available, he's got a Relic 9 Hondo, his Ahsoka is Relic 9. But look at, say, his Leia, Relic 8. And you look at his Drogon, Relic 8, and R2-D2, Relic 8. Well, in that fight against my Ezra, he's Relic 9, and Ahsoka's Relic 9. So they're getting that benefit of the Delta against the team that he most likely brought in. And if he brought in his First Order team, guess what? They're at Relic 7 with Kylo at Relic 8. So Supreme Leader Kylo Ren is getting the Relic Delta, while these guys are getting even worse, right? So there's this aspect where, again, and I don't know what he did or didn't use, I'd love to reach out and ask, but you get, I don't think this battle gets dropped without Relic Delta. So why I say no audit trail is that you don't get a proof. You don't get to know what... Do you guys follow what I mean by that when I say audit trail? There's no proof that, hey, Phil's Kylo was supposed to do 100,000, now it only did 95. We don't have a verification. It's kind of on this, trust me, bro, it's working. Well, it doesn't feel like it is, and there hasn't been a post from CG communicating, Relic Delta's working as intended, because I'm going to be brutally honest with everybody here. If it was working as intended, they would have told us already. I guarantee you, it's not working as intended. And like, I really believe that to my core, that it's not working the way that it should. They do not want to post that on the forums. They have learned, they know not to post that right now. Because if they say, the minute they say, hey, this isn't working the way we intended, the entire community is going to be like, turn it off then until you fix it because we're losing stuff. It's not in their interest to turn it off because it's benefiting the people that they want, which is the spending class of the game. So that's part of my problem with this whole thing has been, they could show, oh, here's the numbers that are in the game. It doesn't mean it's working that way, right? It doesn't mean that it's working. It's there, but something's happening that's not accurately, transpiring. And it's benefiting the players that they would want it to benefit, which are the larger accounts, the accounts that have either spent more time or money in the game. So I really believe that. In my job, I work as an accountant in inventory and internal controls. And my entire job is asking the people that I work with to prove things to me. And auditors, when they come to audit my company, it is, Phil, prove these things, right? Show us the proof, like the hard proof, and where did it come from? And, I have to prove everything. It's not on a trust me bro system. And that's one of my biggest complaints with this is they can change it and not tell us, right? Like they could go in, adjust those numbers, and maybe the numbers would be the same, but they could adjust the code, not tell us, and we wouldn't know a difference. And that has been a big problem for me, right? It really has been. It just eats me alive. I trust people about as far as I can throw them. And especially with something that has polarized the community like Relic Delta has, I think they're going to be very careful on any communication that they have about it, because they cannot afford another one of the situations where they had that post that they deleted because it was like, oh, some minor spend will help you. Like, they can't afford stuff like that. The next thing, I'm looking at my notes down there. The next thing I've noticed with Relic Delta, and many other players have said the same thing, you feel the negative a lot more than you feel the positives. So, like, for example, if I was to go up against Darth Vorian here with my Relic 8 Kylo, you can 100% feel the difference in how much less damage I'm doing. Like, I can feel that. I don't feel the boost I get. When I did some of my Grand Arena fights, I didn't quite notice that boost in damage comparatively, but I noticed when I was dealing less damage. And that was something we brought up in, I remember, Sanjita in a content creator, I forget if it was the Discord or a DM, he showed how, like, the damage penalty is far more invasive than the damage boost, that it's a far greater change. And it's spot on. Like, the damage decrease is so much worse. And that has been one of my staunchest, like, criticisms and stances, and, like, the whole concept of getting the damage increase and decrease really bothers me, because you're getting hurt both ways. So it's, if it was just a damage increase or just a damage decrease, there could be a conversation, but because you're getting it two ways, you're getting, screwed both times. So again, it's Relic Delta. A lot of us were very against it. And so far, we all feel validated in being against it. And I'm hearing reports from players in the mid part of the game who are saying that my Relic 5s can't take out Relic 7s, and I'm struggling with 3 to 5. That even the 2 Relic Delta is a crazy hill to climb. And I can believe that, right? And I can especially believe it when you compare something like a Relic 5 Finn here, where their mastery is sitting at 25, right? So they got the 25 mastery, their stats are here, and you compare that to a character who is Relic 7 with additional stats and the mastery at 45. That's a significant jump in mastery, right? So there's a conversation that should happen where how Relic Delta is interacting at each of these relic levels. And again, I don't know the testing that happened, but I've always been kind of vehemently critical of the players they chose. Not because they're bad players outside of Egnard's, he's obviously bad. But there are all these content creators who know the game inside out, left, right, up, and down. I mean, Fatal was a tester. Do you guys know how freaking smart Fatal is? Now, I know he did a lot of very good testing. I'm not saying they didn't do good testing. But to draw maybe a like-minded comparison, when I was in college, my friends and I needed a music class. And so we took this fundamentals of music theory, and we all thought it'd be a joke. Well, one, the professor who gave it was, like, the head of the music department, and she, like, cared. You know, like, we were all there for just a grade, and she was, like, first question was, like, how many of you have perfect pitch? And I'm looking at my friends like, what the hell is perfect pitch? Like, I had no clue. So there was this girl in our class who raises her hand like she has perfect pitch. So, come to find out at some of these talent shows we have at the school, one of the girls in my class is up there singing on those shows. And this professor, we'd have to sing for some of our tests. Like, you'd have to, like, do, re, mi, fa, right? And she'd go alphabetically. Well, this girl's last name was right in front of mine. And I would always get hammered on these tests because I'd have to go after, freaking, Adele. And here I am sounding like a, dump truck driving through a nuclear power plant. Like, that's not a fair comparison. You can't test us that way. Like, how am I supposed to get tested next to somebody who's got perfect pitch and I don't even know what it is? So, am I as good of a singer as her? Absolutely not. But you shouldn't be, you can't be expecting to have your grading scale for the person that's perfect at this. And I think that was my, we're kind of coming full circle with that story. It's kind of the same thing with the testing. You shouldn't be putting the testing in hands of people who understand so much of the game that they're going to be able to make up for that delta with what I always refer to as the soft skill, right? I always break skill into two categories. You have your hard skills, which your hard skill is, understanding Bo-Katan Mandalore beats Lord Vader, right? That's a hard skill, right? You think about, like, you can learn that. It's a skill that you can have if you understand how that battle works. And the soft skills are kind of, okay, this person, this happened, when to use this ability, who to target here. That's kind of the soft skill side of it, right? And so with, when I think about, like, the players that they chose for this beta, they have a ton of those soft skills. Well, they don't represent the average Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes player. And I'm not saying that, Meathead could be like, oh, I'm going to reach out to, I understand that you can only test with so many people. But if their results were, okay, it feels this way, then we should be able to translate that to, all right, maybe we need to scale it back a bit. Like, that's the way I would think. Let's scale it back a bit, because if the best players are saying X, what are the players who aren't the best going to say? And that's, I think, the results that we're seeing in game now. So that's been a part of it, again, that I've really wanted to make sure I drive home. Now, speaking of those skills, Relic Delta kind of removes the need for skill. I shouldn't say remove the need. It removes skill from fights that used to exist there. Look at, like, this Ahsoka fight here. It removes skill from my opponent that he's probably a very good player. But because I have higher relics, it didn't matter. And on the flip side, when I went up against his Ahsoka with a Relic 7 Ezra Bridger Exile, I have a Relic 9 Drogon. I had no problem. This was the easiest Ahsoka fight I have ever done in my life. The easiest Ahsoka fight I have ever done in my life, because my team had more relics on them. Do you know how crazy that is? Hey, do you understand how crazy that is? And again, I think this whole thing has been very, Relic Delta is really targeting a small group of players in the game. And I don't like that at all. It's not, like Tassanex and, Chiss Empire, those guys, they don't care. So, to answer some of the questions I've seen from the community, right? I think we all understand we don't like Relic Delta right now. It's not working. To answer some of the questions I've seen, no, I do not think CG is going to remove Relic Delta. The last thing I truly remember them removing and not replacing with some other system was tournaments, which is, that has probably been 6 or 7 years since they've been in the game. Even longer, maybe 8. Tournaments were really cool. You'd use your roster and ally points to do battles. It was kind of similar to, like, Marvel Strike Force's Blitz mode. right? That's kind of what tournaments were. You'd get ranked. Pervasive cheating. That's why they canceled them. It was just pervasive cheating. But that's like the last time I remember something being in the game that they like deleted. Because even if you go back to the challenge pit raid, they deleted that, but they moved it into the Crate Dragon raid and Speeder Bike raid and, you know, the Naboo raid and now Order 66. Like, it got replaced with something brand new, and the challenge pit raid was active until that new system was put in place. So I don't think Relic Delta is going to get turned off. It would shock me if it was. I would assume that they will go to extreme lengths of, you know, toning it back before they would ever just turn it off. Because turning it off, if we're all honest with ourselves, and, you know, this would be a criticism of them at times, I feel I can be very critical of myself, right? I can be very critical. I know my production quality is low in my videos. I know that I'm not the smartest player in this game. I know that sometimes I ramble too much and I lose my train of thought, and I apologize for all of those things, but I can own up to it. I feel that sometimes it'd be nice to hear them just say, we messed up. And it's not often that it happens. And if it happened more often, I feel they'd garner more respect from the community for owning up to their mistakes. Removing Relic Delta at this point would be a failure to them, would be seen as a failure, and it will get, I guarantee you, it would get changed to hell before it gets removed. And I want to give Solo Base a shout here. He was in the content creator Discord, and he said a really, you know, he brought up a good point where he said, you know, when they brought up Datacrons, when Datacrons were first introduced into the game, they really, you know, the community was outraged. There was a ton of backlash, and he said they made a lot of changes to them in order to kind of salvage the game and save it. And I think to an extent he's right. They had to make some changes to Datacrons in order for it to feel like a less oppressive system. Now, what I would argue is the release of Datacrons forced a lot of players to quit who would not have quit had they not been introduced at all. So, you know, you can say, oh, well, they, you know, saved the game. And I think to an extent they do deserve credit for that the changes they made at least made them a little bit more tolerable. But, you know, does it count if, you know, like, does it count if I, you know, this is so bad. This is going to go so poorly. Oh, boy. Does it count if I get us in a car wreck and my wife is, you know, because I was texting and driving, and I get us in a car wreck and my wife is dangling over a cliff? Oh, do I get all the credit for saving her life if, you know, when I pull her out of that thing? No, like, I should get yelled at for texting and driving. Like, if I wasn't doing that, she wouldn't have been falling off the cliff in the first place. So, to kind of, you know, come full circle with that, if Relic Delta wasn't introduced, maybe there wouldn't have to be such drastic measures to, you know, update it. And the same thing with Datacrons, right? So, as much as I think the smart thing would just be, all right, the community hates this so much. Like, you know, again, I'm very different. I recognize, you know, shocker, right? You know, I create Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes videos in my basement. I'm not a normal person. When somebody is like, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, I'm not going to keep pushing it. Right? I'm not going to keep like, oh yeah, you know what? Like, my daughter, you know, we put her in like soccer shots and she didn't really like it. I would have loved for her to do soccer shots instead of dance. I cannot tell you how much I cannot stand being at a dance recital for 3 hours to watch her dance for 3 minutes. I cannot stand it. It drives me insane, and it's always when there's good sports on. But I will do it because I'm there to support her. But regardless, I would have rather her play soccer. But it's not about me, right? Like, it's not about what I want. It's about what she wants. And sometimes as creators of this game, what does your community want? What would your community respect? I think we all respect that you guys need to make money. I think we're okay with that. But I think there's ways to go about it that could have done a lot better job than what this era system and Relic Delta does. I want to leave you guys with some final thoughts about Relic Delta and kind of what it's going to mean moving forward for us. Relic Delta is going to be one of these game modes one of these additions to the game that I think will be very polarizing for players. I think that it will get to a point where some things are just completely unplayable, and that they're going to have to, I honestly believe Relic Delta is going to need to spawn additional oversight on their part into Grand Arena and Territory Wars to ensure that matchups aren't just completely unplayable, or else people are going to leave the game. And I almost didn't want to say that because I don't want to sound like this, oh, the game's ending. I think they will, this game, they are trying to lay the foundation for this game to continue. But that's on us. Like, we are responsible for keeping the game going. So voice your opinions. I don't want you guys leaving the game yet, right? We're still so early into this, and there's a lot of stuff to go on. But definitely, consider staying. Because without you guys as a community, this game disappears. And as much as we can, not like this system, the loudest thing that can speak is your wallet. That's as much as our voices can be loud, the loudest thing that you can do is speak with your wallet. And they will answer. I think, it might take a little bit, but they will notice it. They've noticed it a couple of times where things have changed simply because the player base wasn't responding the way that they want. So if I can offer you advice, if you are someone who's like, what can I do to stop Relic Delta? It's going to cause some sacrifice on your part. Maybe it's not spending on the Relic 10 materials. Maybe it's not spending on the era characters. Maybe, for some players, it's going to be, I can't not spend. So, you just might have to pick and choose. But, that's the way that you can speak. The way you want to send a message, don't spend if that's what you want to do. I will say at the end of the video here, I'm going to wait this out. I'm here for the long haul, unfortunately. I love this game. I love my guild. I love my friends too much to not play, and I get a lot of enjoyment, but that enjoyment has slipped quite a bit with this update so far. So, I really appreciate, if you guys are still sticking around, Wampa is king in the comments. You guys know what to do. Like and subscribe if you're still watching and not liked or subscribed at this point. Like, what are we doing here, folks? But those are my thoughts on Delta, right? I think, we covered everything I'd like to cover, at least in this video. I do need to talk about the good parts of this update, because there are some good parts that they deserve some credit for that isn't really getting brought to light. So we'll make sure to do that. I love you all. May the force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.